Here we go.
Don't eat fried stuff. And here's why. The amount of inflammation in the body from one meal with fried things, and I don't care if it's fried fish or fried potato chips, it doesn't matter. That increases inflammation for 2 days. A cigarette is 4 to 8. Literally, you're better off to smoke a cigarette than you are to eat a plate of French fries. And it's that big of a deal. French fries, well, they're fried. Here, bake the damn French fries. It's not that hard. You bake them and put really good butter on them afterwards. It tastes the same.
No, but when you go out, then what's baking it with butter? I know.
So it's because restaurants are, they fry them in the worst oils they've been in.
Yeah.
You got to just say no. And you look at it like, that's not food.
Okay.
He's still at it, isn't he? He's still bloody going.
And just on that note, just to add oil into the wound, this guy, someone's tagged me in this recently, because there's a sort of guru sphere on Twitter, which you'll be totally insulated from. So me saying this, you're going to be like, Yusuf, that sounds mental, that's not happening. But they're obsessed with cold showers, sunning your bum hole, and seed oils.
Okay.
So they're like, that's like the new kind of current iterate. You know, previously it was black coffee, then it was eggs, and then now it's bumhole sunning and seed oils.
Which of those things are bad and which of those are good? Is like, so cold shower's good, sunning the bumhole good. Is seed oil bad?
Seed oil bad. That's where I mean, maybe in a year's time seed oil will be good and whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this guy has made leaflets for himself that say, "Hi there, I have a sensitivity to seed oils," and he's listed out all the oils. I can't eat them. Please substitute with pure coconut oil, beef tallow, duck fat, etc. And
with a QR code, a handy QR code just in case.
Yeah. So like, there's a couple of comments being like, you won't get the seed oils, but you'll definitely get some pubic hair in your food. But yeah, it's the reason I brought that up is it's part of the same kind of demonizing of one specific thing. And in this case, it's like, what did he say? Having a French fry is the same as smoking a cigarette. You're better off smoking cigarettes because the inflammation doesn't last as long.
I think that, and yeah, so like also the add-on from that is that you're fine as long as you bake the potato and then cover it in butter. Like, that's okay. But as soon as you fry them, there's this sort of horrendous sequence of events set off that you'd have been better off just smoking a cigarette and not bothering. It's just such a weird piece of logic.
Well, the paradox of saying if you bake the French fries, but then if you bake fries, are they still baked or are they fried? But yeah, like this idea that
bakes,
French bakes, that's what they should be. This happens when you get a kind of health guru who understands one piece of the puzzle, or thinks they do, and they just miss the wood for the trees. And he's labeling inflammation as the only marker of ill health, and you're ignoring the carcinogenicity of a cigarette, the lung tar, the addiction, the smell, the vascular risk, like the neurological effects, like all these downsides of smoking a cigarette, because the anti-inflammatory response to a cigarette doesn't quite last as long as a French fry.
Yeah. He's been doing this for years, this sort of thing, in varying degrees of ridiculousness. Like, all the way from coffee, normal coffee is killing us all because it has mold in, mycotoxins in, and you have to buy his coffee, and you have to put butter and MCT oil in your coffee. That's how he kind of... He was popular a long time before that, and I actually used to follow him quite a lot when we were in the low carb days. I used to listen to his podcast, and he made me just think, like, oh my god, like, I don't understand any of this. Like, I thought I had a reasonable grasp on nutrition, but I've got it all wrong, and I've had it all wrong the whole time. And it seemed to me like he died away a little bit, but that'll just be because I'm not following him, I suppose. And to see him here on Lewis Howes, because that's a big podcast.
Yeah.
Like, that'll have had a lot of downloads. And on that, he's giving that piece of advice.
Well,
Does-
the bigger crime is those glasses.
Well, it'd be because the blue light is like giving him eyeball cancer, and so he has to have he'll have some specific set of reasons. But do you think that he thinks? Do you think he genuinely thinks that that's true, or is it all just this like throw rocks at stuff and sell my MCT oil and it'll somehow work?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right that scaremongering is so effective, and even for someone who has a decent grounding in physiology and of metabolism as you do, it was like, oh, but maybe what if? Maybe I'm missing something. And I remember we did a video about Dave Asprey 10 years ago, where we quoted him on saying, Diet Coke is so neurotoxic that if I had a sip of it right now, I would be slurring my speech. Now, if I had a patient that said that, because I'm sure he'd say, oh, well, it's because I've eliminated all the toxins from my body, so when I do have them, I'm really sensitive to them. What I would say is that he's got some kind of phobic functional disorder where he's convinced himself of these environmental things being so lethal and so bad that he's developing immediate acute symptoms like slurring your speech. Like, do you know how strong a drug has got to be, how damaging it's got to be to cause you to instantly slur your speech?
Well, think about how much, I guess maybe this isn't your thing, but think about how much alcohol you have to have before you start to slur your speech. Like, before you start to lose like basic functions. It's not a sip, right? So that an alcohol is pretty strong. So as a thing to ingest, like if you have a lot of it, it can be really serious. So he's claiming that Diet Coke has more of a potent effect than alcohol.
And that French fries are worse than cigarettes. So there's a lot of false equivalences that are being pulled out, saying French fries are bad because they cause inflammation and you're better off smoking a cigarette. By that logic, you're better off like eating a kitchen knife because it doesn't produce as much acute inflammation as, well, actually it probably would if you ate a kitchen knife, but
probably not as much global inflammation. Inflammation. Like, would hurt, but I don't know. I see your point though. Like, if you extend that argument, because he's being ridiculous by extending the argument in the way that he's doing it. Like, I think any sensible person would not think that smoking a cigarette is a healthier decision than having a few chips.
Or just like going to huff some glue or something that's like, oh, but it's okay because my CRP didn't go up. Like,
and chips would have been worse than this, so what do I care? I just think it's terrible that he's doing that he's giving that advice out, because like I can remember falling for it all as someone who was spending a lot of time reading about nutrition and training. I remember listening to his stuff when it was new to me and thinking, yep, I'm bought into this. He really seems like he knows what he's talking about. Clearly this is why there's like an obesity problem, right? He's cracked the code. It's not calories and progressive
calories
overload.
after all. Yeah,
it's inflammation. That's what it's been the whole time. So it's not that hard to make that leap. And he's going on a platform like that and saying, don't have chips, smoke instead, basically, is the message, isn't it? Let's say you're a smoker and you watch that. You'll think, well, it's not that bad then. Like, here's this health expert saying that. And then also, what do you do nutritionally with that information?
Well, just you swap out all the oils for butters, keep the calories
butter.
the same. How much more powerful is a headline that's don't do this, do this?
Yeah.
Compared to, like, if he'd come on and said, we pretty much know what's bad for you, don't smoke, try and minimize your alcohol, do some exercise, get a bit of sun, but not too much sun. No one wants to hear that. But if it's bake your French fries in butter, because normal French fries are worth. Anyway.
I have secondly, on the card thing, the seed oil card thing, Is that person actually intolerant to seed oil, or they've read it on Twitter and
They're one of these like ideologues. Is that the right word?
yeah,
Like a one trick pony Twitter account that just always talks about
Seed oil,
how
seed
bad
oil.
seed oils are. And it's so Ben Torme, good old Ben, he tweeted the other day saying, ever noticed how all the kind of seed oil gurus all look like they couldn't do a single press up? And it's such a good point that they've just got the priorities in the wrong place.
They can't do press ups because of the seed oil. It's
Because-
interesting.
Yeah.
So I have been allergic to nuts for my entire life, and have had to carry an EpiPen my entire life, and I've had like multiple allergy tests. I've had a couple of reactions that haven't been anaphylactic, but have been pretty shit. Like shit being the operative word, right? Like fully wiped me for a day by having a tiny little bit of nuts in a cucumber sandwich. So cucumber and pesto sandwich, white bread, crust cut off, looked like the safest thing in the world. Absolutely floored me for like 8 hours. Anyway, so I've witnessed the world adjust over time from like when I was 13 to, or let's say 15 years ago, right? From then to now, how hard it is, or in a restaurant when you'll say to somebody, hey, like this is my order, I've got a nut allergy. Back then they'd be like, yeah, that's okay. There's no nuts in the food. Now it's like someone goes behind the counter, they wheel out the allergy cart, there's a whole matrix, and they've got to get sign off from the manager that's somewhere else. And I also go to dinner with a lot of people who will, as they're ordering, they will say like, oh, actually, yeah, and I can't have this, and I can't have this, and I can't have this. They haven't got an allergy to it. They might believe they have an intolerance, and I'm not saying they can't do that. It's just, it's frustrating from my perspective seeing stuff like that, because when it's like I might eat something on this plate and have to like jab myself with an EpiPen and go to hospital, and you've just read that seed oil might be a bad idea, like you and I are going to have the same conversation with the waiter, and they're going to weight what we say the same, and might go back into the kitchen and go, oh, some fucking fussy eaters over on that table, just something about nuts, something about seed oil. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that. I feel like it's harder to be taken seriously with an allergy these days, because everybody has something, whether it's real or not.
You've put that very diplomatically, but yeah, it frivolizes your lethal allergy.
Yeah. Yeah.
When people, I don't like broccoli because I think it makes my nose a bit itchy. Compared to something, so there's two lines of thought you could take with this, and it's similar to the calories and menus thing that we discussed the other week. One of them is other people having sensitivities is good for me because everyone takes it more seriously. The other one, so for example, gluten. Or vegetarianism, like now that it's become popular to be gluten-free, it's become fashionable to be gluten-free, that there's loads of gluten-free stuff in the supermarkets. There's a special aisle where you can get cornbread and spelt bread and stuff. But equally, it means that if you're genuinely celiac, people go, you're one of those kind of hipstery, fussy people. So it makes you look like more of a twat, but it opens up your options. And it's a difficult one.
There's just so I guess from a celiac perspective, like suddenly you go into Tesco and there's like a gluten-free aisle. That didn't used to exist. Like go back 15 years, at least as far as I remember, that didn't exist. There's not a nut-free aisle, at least not in the supermarkets I shop in. Like it's just because there are foods that have nuts in and foods that don't. It's not like, nuts aren't like a common ingredient that are in a lot of things. But I also get asked like, how bad is it? That's the other new thing. That never used to happen. How bad is it? Like, I'm going to say something in response to that question. What are you going to do with the information I give you? Like, if I say, not that serious, what are you then going to go and change?
Yeah, the answer doesn't have any kind of functional outcome, does it? So,
no.
And unless it's your doctor saying, like, and it's like, okay, that will determine whether they give you hydrocortisone and adrenaline or just a bit of Piriton. But it's not. It's the guy in the restaurant. So just don't give me any nuts,
no
please.
Nuts. Yeah. But it's the same with celiac versus like gluten intolerant, right? Like if someone's celiac and you give them something with gluten in, that's fairly serious, right? Whereas if someone read in a book last week that gluten might be like giving them headaches, then if they can choose to have gluten and they might not notice, but they're like still giving the same piece of information to the chef, to the kitchen. How does the chef decide that person is just full of shit, whereas that person's got an EpiPen? How are you supposed? You can't, can you? And imagine being a chef in a restaurant and being hit with like allergy, intolerance, can't have this, take this off, and you're trying to like express yourself and put together a piece of food a plate of food that tastes really nice.
It's like you're playing Tetris, trying to dodge all the like. So actually, there's one time, and I actually quite respect this, even though it was annoying for me. There's a sushi place in Newcastle called Sushi Me Rolling, and they're very good sushi, very kind of new and fancy, very fresh stuff. And they were like, "Oh, have you got any allergies?" This was as I was placing my order, about to pay, and I was like, "Oh yeah, oysters and oyster sauce," and they were just like, "Oh, no, get out, immediately leave." And so they wouldn't. They were just like, "We're not even going to serve you."
Wow.
And I was annoyed because I wanted some sushi, but also I was like, actually, fair play. Like they're not even going to take the chance.
So that I suppose that either is like a lack of confidence in their like controls, or oyster sauce is just everywhere. It's just all over the kitchen. It's just a bloke in the back just like ladling it out all over the sushi. It's probably somewhere in between the two. Like
there's just spatters of it everywhere.
Yeah. Because I've had that a couple of times where like a restaurant will just refuse to serve me, or they'll be like, you can't have this because we didn't make the bread. The bread's come from off-site and we're not confident in the bread. I was like, well, let me decide about the bread. Like, has the bread got nuts in? No, it hasn't got nuts in. It's like, right, okay. But it might have nuts in. Yeah, it might have nuts in. And why?
How could it might have nuts in?
Because they don't have control over like the processes in the bakery that's delivered the bread. I'm like, as long as there's not like a nut in the bread, I'll be okay. So like, you bring me the bread, like, no, I'm sorry, sir, we're not serving you any bread. Like, God.
Well, because you could take that as like, well, I'll make a cup of tea, but I don't know really if the tea bag has nuts in. Like, I'm not supposed to, but it might. You know,
it might have been
possible.
laying on in a bag of nuts and someone's swirled it around before, possibly. But because there's this like, because I've had a few things catch me off guard that like cucumber sandwich shouldn't have nuts in. My default now in a restaurant is I'll order and I'll just mention it at the end, and you get a whole spread of reactions. The best reactions are in like, so Venice, for example, said that to a waiter, got a nut allergy, and he went, okay. Just and it's hard to know, like, has he heard me, understood me, and thought there's no nuts? Has he heard me, like not understood me, and thought what a nice gentleman? Or is it like, oh, I wouldn't like to be him?
Oh yeah, true. Because from that you can't tell. Like, is it cool story, bro, or is it like, well, good luck?
But on the face of it, like, you work in a pizza restaurant, of course, there's no nuts. You know, and I think on reflection, it's probably that. And I have a lot of respect for just the unwavering confidence. All that's to say, don't listen to Dave Asprey. If in doubt, do not listen to Dave Asprey.
There's the conclusion.